What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/EntitledParents.
Alright, this goddamn Goliath of a story is called Christmas Always Brought Out the Worst. 4 entitled parent stories from a former kindergarten teacher. In a previous life, some years ago, I was a teacher at a large kindy and preschool in a very affluent suburb. Most of our parents were lovely. Unfortunately, the handful that weren't really took the cake. Sometimes literally. Christmas always seemed to bring out the worst in them. I thought I would share 4 of the more memorable stories. I apologize, this got rather long between them. Parent 1 had 2 lovely children with a third on the way. She had the new bub around 4 weeks before Christmas. One day, a week before Christmas, at drop-off time, I overheard her asking whether we would be open on Christmas Day. We were not, only Christmas Eve and Boxing Day. She seemed displeased with the answer, but left. The new baby was enrolled in the nursery the moment they were 3 weeks old, the minimum age. On Christmas Eve, I heard her screeching at our director at the top of her lungs. She demanded to know why we weren't open on Christmas Day, citing, "It's ridiculous to expect her to change her plans. She shouldn't have to spend the day with children if she didn't want to, and isn't that the point of us in the first place?" She stormed out, screaming that she would be dropping her children off in the morning and threatened that someone had better be there. Our poor director came in on Christmas morning for a few hours to ensure she wouldn't make good on her threat, with the intention of calling the police if she did. Thankfully, she didn't try to drop her children off at an empty center, but I heard later that it was only because her husband found out and intervened. He came by after Christmas to apologize to the director and also their children's teachers. Apparently, when advised we would be closed, she had begun a campaign to alternately bribe, threaten, and emotionally blackmail their teachers into babysitting her children for her so she could spend the day drinking with her childless friends, and not with her or her husband's family. Husband was not impressed. Parent 2 was always well-dressed and drove a very expensive car. She had 1 child at the center. During Christmas week, the preschool children decided they would like to have a party with the teacher's help. Each parent was asked to bring a small plate to share and were invited to stay and do crafts with their children during the party. The food was largely packaged items like chips and cookies, but a few parents brought true Aussie cuisine: lamingtons, fairy bread, mini frankfurts, and sliced fruit. One parent very generously brought in a huge tiered display of beautifully decorated homemade cupcakes to celebrate the end of the year. The kids were incredibly excited to see such a spread of party food, and seeing as there was plenty to go around, sweetly decided to invite the class below them to join the party. The class entitled parent's child was in. As usual, entitled parent dropped off her child late, thus arriving while the party was in full swing. No other parents from her child's class were there, but she immediately scooted upstairs to join in. This was fine with the teachers, who were run off their feet arranging activities, but were not too busy to notice her piling up 2 plates with food before plonking down in a corner to eat both, whilst snarling at her child about not whining for junk food when he asked for something from her plates. She also declined to engage with any of the activities. At the end of the party, the teachers and remaining parents put the remaining food into the fridge and escorted their children outside to play. The intention was to share the remaining food with the other classes later for afternoon tea. Entitled parent's child was counted amongst the children outside at roll call, but his mother was nowhere to be seen. It wasn't uncommon for parents to slip away to avoid upsetting their kids when they left, so we thought nothing of it. Sometime later, the teacher returned to their classroom to clean up and ready the room for lunch, but found that the remaining food was gone from the counters and the fridge seemed emptier. She asked around the other teachers during lunch break to thank whoever had tidied up for her, but no one knew what she was referring to until a teacher from the class below mentioned entitled parent had come to her asking for some plastic wrap. She had given it, thinking entitled parent was helping to tidy up or wrap up her own child's food. We realized then that entitled parent had collected and taken almost all of the remaining food, including a bag or 2 of unopened crackers, a box of chocolates that was usually a gift to the teacher, a large container of frankfurts, a half a dozen mini pies, a plate of fruit, and at least 15 cupcakes. How she managed to carry it all, we have no idea. No one brought it up with her, but we couldn't quite look her in the eye after that either. For those wondering how we knew for sure it was her son was sent with the Frankfurts for lunch the next day, in the same container. Parent 3 had 2 children at the center and was renowned for always being late to pick up. He was hit with late pickup fees at least a few times a month, but usually wheedled his way out of paying them, citing this excuse or that. He had notoriously been late to pick them up the previous New Year's Eve, so this Christmas, the director took him aside to gently remind him that the late collection fees would be triple this year. He ranted that it was ridiculous. Why should he pay babysitting fees when he already paid a lot to have his kids here? And so on. The director thankfully didn't back down, and at the following morning drop-off, his wife promised there would be no issues this year. Christmas Eve rolled around, and the pickup time of 6 p.m. came and went. 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 8:30 p.m., no contact from the poor kids' parents, and they couldn't be reached either. 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m., nothing. At this point, we had tried not only the parents, but all emergency contacts, none of whose phones were connected. The kids were scared, hungry, tired, and crying despite the best efforts to distract them. We needed approval from head office to call police or remove them from the site, but weren't granted either. Finally, at almost 10 p.m., while the director and 2 remaining staff members, myself included, were deciding whether we were permitted now to call police or take the child off-site, a car showed up. Their frantic mother came running down the path and begun hysterically crying and calling out when she saw us. To say we were relieved to see her too was an understatement, more so her poor kids. Her tears turned to rage as she explained her bastard of a husband had told her to go last-minute shopping with their grandparents and he would collect the kids. Instead, he had gone drinking with some work friends. While she had gotten home to find neither him nor the kids, she called him and gotten the response of, "Don't worry about the kids, they're fine, they're taken care of," and had gotten nothing else out of him but, "They're fine." She had called around all their usual babysitters and family, but no one had heard from the husband. That was when she thought to try us. Living close by, she had driven straight over. Needless to say, she was ropeable but thanked us profusely. We didn't see the family again until the new year. Both she and entitled parent came in together to drop off the kids. I've never seen an adult look as sullen as he did. She forced him to apologize. Entitled parent tried to run away after muttering some sort of apology, but in that terrifying voice that mothers do so well, she asked if there wasn't something he was forgetting. Grumbling and muttering profanities under his breath, he opened his wallet, pulled out $600 cash, shoved it at her, and stormed out, still snarling about there being nothing wrong with what happened and having to pay us was BS. She insisted that we split it between the 3 of us who had stayed back to take care of the kids and promised it would never happen again. Sadly, they divorced later that year, but she was true to her word, and the rare times entitled parent was on pickup duty after that, he was never late again. Parent 4 had 4 children of different ages. The youngest was in the nursery, the oldest was in the preschool. She was quite well known in the center for wearing a great deal of expensive jewelry, fashionable heels, and pricey perfume. She was generous with her time and often donated craft supplies and secondhand books to the classrooms. Not uncommon acts amongst parents, but she seemed to enjoy making a great show of it. One year, we decided each child in each class could do a surprise gift for their parents. We advertised it to the parents on hand-drawn posters and letters sent home that they would receive their special surprise gifts from their kids as thank yous for supporting the center on Christmas Eve. The general response was, "Oh, that's a lovely idea." Entitled Parent 4, however, was especially excited. She bugged her kids to tell her what the surprise was and winked at the teachers that she couldn't wait. The kids all worked hard on their gifts. The nursery made paper flowers with hand and footprints. My class colored in traced outlines of themselves. Another class made paper lanterns with words like, "I love my mummy, daddy, because," written on the strips. The oldest classes made painted clay hand tree ornaments, and so on. Each teacher took the time to write personalized thank you notes to each parent, citing contributions, memories, etc. When Christmas Eve came around, entitled parent arrived to collect her children, practically skipping. Starting at the nursery, she received the personalized thank you notes and the paper flowers. She thanked the teacher and moved on to collect her next child. She received another thank you note and a book of drawings her child had made for her. The teacher later commented that entitled parent had seemed puzzled but had not thought anything of it at the time. Collecting child number 3, she took the thank you note with a frown and the lantern her child had made and shoved it into her handbag, along with the book and paper flowers, despite her child's cry of, "Careful, mommy!" Child number 4 was the eldest and proudly presented her with his painted clay handprint and another thank you note. This time, entitled parent just stared at the gift, ignoring her child babbling excitedly about how they were made, then looked at the teacher and said, "Is that it?" She apparently then grabbed her eldest's gear, muttering under her breath, and had stormed out. The teacher was puzzled but thought nothing of it until the director came by. Apparently, after entitled parent had gotten home, she had called, demanding to know why we advertised the parents being given gifts when all she received was trash. Apparently, given her numerous and considerable donations to the center, how considerable toilet paper rolls are, I'm not sure, and given our astronomical fees, she had expected to be given something that was more suitable. In other words, something store-bought and expensive. She instructed us to never waste her or her children's time again. Sadly, it was her children who came out the worst in this story. Her 2 eldest were very reluctant to take home artwork again. Sadder still, the eldest had to be coaxed into participating in any craft activities for some time after, even though you could see he wanted to. It was always heartbreaking to see the damage an entitled parent could do to their kids. Oh, okay, that last one really made me sad. That poor kid, or those poor kids. That mother's not a very good— none of these people are good parents. Gosh, they're all jerks, man. I swear, one of these days, I'm gonna read stories about really nice parents who love their children so much and do so many nice things for them, and all the sacrifices they make for their children, because those stories are nice and wholesome and make me tear up in other ways. Anyways, this story's called His Fourth Time Taking Algebra. So, I don't usually call out classmates, but this subreddit and the stories in it reminded me of this guy who I had the distinct displeasure of sitting next to in 9th grade algebra. To start with, he stunk. Like, really, really stunk. Not sure to this day what the smell was, but it definitely wasn't BO or pee or even the unique smell of some of the kids who lived on hog farms. The closest thing to it was a sandwich you'd forgotten about in your backpack for a few days. I've described it to others, and they've assumed he was obese. He wasn't. I never saw him with his shirt off, but I'd guess he was about 10 to 12% body fat tops, just from his rough physical shape. He also bragged about how much he loved to play rough with my boys. This guy also smoked, definitely cigarettes, like weekly, and was always spitting and hawking loogies, etc. He was 18 years old, and this was his 4th time taking 9th grade algebra, and his 5th year of high school. He was boasting on the first day that he was best buds with the teacher and would be an example to all you freshmen. The first test, not even a week after that claim, he bombed with under 30%. He did this for the next 2 tests before teacher picked one of the students to mentor and tutor him for the rest of the class for extra credit. That person also got to sit next to him for the rest of the class. And you guessed it, that person was me. I started tutoring him right away in class, and oh boy, did I have a job ahead of me. He thought each letter in the alphabet corresponded to its place in the alphabet. In the equation mx plus b equals y, he thought it meant 13 times 24 plus 2 equals 25, and was always trying to play around with moving the letters to make it make sense to him. He was constantly forgetting about PEMDAS, and instead did functions from left to right, just like reading. I stuck it out, mostly because of the extra credit. I arranged for him to meet me for tutoring in the library. I prepped for a crash course in math and resetting everything he knew about math. He showed up about 20 minutes late and brought his girl with him. Then they spent the next 2 hours kissing and just about ignoring everything I tried to teach him. Afterwards, he had kinda accepted that the letters could mean different numbers. Then we arranged for the same time next week. I told him that he should come alone. This isn't even the worst of it. When the midterm came around, and I had spent the last 6 weeks tutoring him, where he normally ate fast food at these sessions and got kicked out of the library. He got a 50% or so, and was told I wouldn't be tutoring him anymore. He took this to mean the class was done and stopped attending. A few weeks later, I was speaking with the math teacher. He told me that Kevin basically stopped going to classes. All of them. Kevin was hauled in by the truant officer and tried to explain that he had flunked out again and was waiting until the next term to return. He was set straight, kinda, and was returned to his classes. In December, he turned 19 and started to hang around the various military recruiters that came to the school. He kept bragging to the others in the class that he was just gonna sign up and go to war. Granted, this was during the Iraq War, but I was like, seriously, man? You need to graduate to enlist. The term came to its end. He failed algebra and was told he'd have to repeat his senior year again. On January 5th, when we came back, he decided it was senior prank day and proceeded to stand on the roof with a fire hose and spray students coming in with water. In January, when it's single digits and snowing outside, he was arrested after 50 to 60 students, good thing the school had 10 or so entrances, were hosed down until soaked, and then the water started to freeze on the walkway and more kids started to slip on the ice. He was arrested again, but came back to school at the end of January for reasons. He wasn't popular by any means, had yet a new girl, and continued trying to join the military despite getting told by all of them his arrest made him ineligible. He finally got expelled when he was found to be using his locker as storage for various drugs. I heard and saw a bit more about him over the next few years. He made the rounds at various fast food places, always getting fired for some reason or another. He worked for Walmart and I bumped into him one day. He worked in the grocery and was stocking. He still smelled. I know this isn't as detailed as some others, but that guy just had this look. The look of someone seeing something and not understanding any of it. The look never changed, regardless if he was doing something or looking aimlessly off into the ceiling. And again, I need to reiterate, he stank! It was the kind of smell that is just impossible to put your finger on, but it's something you never get used to. It wasn't obvious from across the room, but once you were within 4 to 6 feet, it hits you like a freight train. Oh, interesting smelling people. I've met a few of those in my lifetime.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.